My effect is a lot bigger than that because I help set the standard for others to copy. The other people making skateboards, they didn't set the standard, they followed it. The story of business is adapt or die, right? And if you don't change, so like 4-in-1, it couldn't adapt fast enough to last. In the early 2000s, we sold Element to Billabong, and they told me, hey, if you don't produce stuff in China, you're going to lose our business. I ended up partnering up with a company that made lower-end skateboards in China to make the high-end ones. So they already had the veneer, they had the transfer printing. I brought better glue and molds and knowledge, right? At the end, I never really got that operation ran for 10 years, but it never got to its potential. And some other manufacturing companies didn't go to China. They just went to Mexico. But like Ed Templeton launched his career on New Deal. So he was the rookie. He was an amateur on Schmitt sticks and first pro on New Deal. Ed Templeton, Danny Sargent, Andrew Morrison.
Bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio de Efecto Ollie, donde hablamos de patinetas, proyectos, anécdotas y aprendizajes.
Así es, banda. Sean bienvenidos a Efecto Ollie, su podcast favorito de skate de México, el mundo y sus alrededores, ALB.
A huevo, el día de hoy estamos muy agradecidos por la experiencia que estamos viviendo. Es una gran experiencia. Queremos agradecer a los patrocinadores que son Bolo Brand.
Así es, y Dealer Skate Shop, que nos están apoyando.
Y Core, que hizo posible esto para que estuviéramos aquí en este lugar, en este magnífico lugar. Y vamos a introducir Efecto Ollie detrás de la mente de Paul Schmitt, el profesor Schmitt.
Oh, we got sound effects and everything. All right. Thank you.
We have effects.
Professor, how are you?
I'm all good. Thanks for coming up to Tijuana to see us today.
Thank you for receiving us. It's an honor for me. You know, when I saw you on the nightclub, to me it was like it was a dream. You know, a dream to. I was like, I wish I could have Professor Schmitt on our podcast, and now it's here, you know, and now it's a reality.
Well, you're not even here. I mean, you're here, right? We're here.
Yeah.
So you know, it's President's Day. Nobody came to work today, so we're here, right?
In fact, this morning I was like, oh. It's real.
Yeah, it is.
You know, the professor is real. I saw you in video, like the right channel or something like that with Stussy, that guy.
Yep.
And I said,
I taught him how to ollie hire.
Yeah.
Riser pads.
Yeah. The riser pads. It's like a dilemma, you know, in the skate industry and scene and stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I watched on the nightclub that I really didn't understand anything. It's like a lot of technical stuff that you do to help us skaters, you know, like you get personal with the skater and you try to I don't really know how to explain that, but
tune in what they want, right? You know, the reality is they want their board to feel right. When your board feels right, it's like an extension of your body.
Okay.
Right? It's like it's just part of you. When your board doesn't feel right, it's like a broken arm.
Yeah.
Right? Like broken leg, you just can't get what you want out of it, right? And it's like, you know, so the whole goal is to get people tuned in.
Okay.
You know? And that's why in general with pro skaters, they're very particular. They won't change their wheels. They won't change their truck sizes. You know, they stay there. And then the board is a little more fluid, you know, with change. And then for me, that ends up being like, oh, you changed the truck brand.
Yeah.
I had you tuned in and you changed trucks. And it's like, no wonder you're having a problem.
Yeah.
You know, and the geometry of that truck, or not really the geometry, but the way where the axle is placed within the truck affects it. Right.
Wow. Do you focus on the weight of the person, like the physical?
I really, in general, just use body height.
Okay.
Years ago, I did studies at skate camp with a bunch of kids with height, weight, shoe size, and I really found that height is what does it. Your center of gravity is set by your height. Now, saying that, within height, something I've been paying attention to the last couple of years. So, I'm a 32 inseam, so I'm tall on the top of my body. Okay, I'm 6'2", and I'm a 32 pant. Torrey Pudwell's a 32 pant, and he's about here to me.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
He's short in the upper body and long in the legs. No wonder he ollies so good. Right?
Okay.
So people have always said people with long legs ollie good, right? Like ollie high, okay. Or tall guys, but it's really long legs.
Oh, okay. So
because if people, I'll ask a pro skater, well, what's your inseam? They're like, I don't know. Like, I know I wear this size shoe, but I don't know what my inseam is. It's like, how do you put on your pants every day? I don't know. You know.
So it pretty much is like the long legs that do the like, because I know a lot of short people that can ollie high, and I don't think I'm that short. I'm like average, and I can't ollie that high. Like I'm not a pop person. I don't pop. And like, you know, I don't jump out.
Oh, okay.
Like big enough. So yeah, that's pretty interesting to know that. But like I said, it's difficult for me to, you know,
understand
it. Yeah, it's difficult for a lot of us actually.
Yeah.
So Paul, can you tell us a little bit about the history of skateboarding?
So the history that I found skateboarding in 1973. And that was a clay-wheeled skateboard from the 60s that the neighbors had.
Okay.
The world's first commercially produced skateboard, mass-produced, was by roller derby in 1959. And it was a roller derby number 10 board. It looked like a piece of fence post with roller skate trucks and wheels on it. And so that's where the production of it, a saleable item started, right? And I had steel wheels. But previous to that, the boys would take the girls' roller skates and nail them onto a 2x4 and a box crate and make a scooter out of it. So the classic story is we really don't know where skateboarding came from, okay? In general, it's known to be North America. Okay, there's no documentation elsewhere that seems to come up on it. But scooters were big 1910, 1920s. 100 years ago, scooters were already around.
Okay.
Right? And the reality is they were homemade scooters as well because, you know, economy, recession, wherever society was in that point, you know. But the crazy thing is when you got to a good box crate, they always say the crate came off. Well, the crate came off because it was made of scraps, DIY, right? And because when you churned it, the crate hits the ground and you get crate bite.
Like a wheel bite, right?
Like wheel bite,
like
but
a
crate
wheel
bite.
bite, right?
Okay. Because a lot of people think that, well, skateboarding started in California, but it's unknown, right? It's like
sort of unknown,
knows.
but I would say this. Roller skates are not from California. They're from the Midwest.
Okay.
So as a kid, I lived in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and that's very much Midwest part of the United States. And two things you could do in the winter when it was cold out and snowy and everything. You could go bowling or roller skating. Those were your activities in the winter.
Okay.
You know, maybe basketball in a school gym. That was about it, right?
Yeah.
So really big. So roller skating was big there. And to think I found a skateboard in rural Wisconsin, but because the roller skate people had the sales and distribution to all the roller rinks.
Yeah.
And that's how skateboards got out there. So they got around the Midwest really good. Now, if you look at a roller derby board from just a couple years later, it now looks like a surfboard. It no longer looks like a fence post, you know. But we actually didn't get commercially produced skateboard wheels when the urethane wheel was brought out by Frank Nasworthy in 1973. That started the revolution of skateboarding growing again. Now, they still had ball bearings in them at that time. And when the bearings would come out, your wheel would roll out over. Oh, it was horrible. And so that's what I started on, is ball bearings. And then I bought a urethane wheel board at the department store for $20, and I was a fool, according to the kids in the neighborhood. But, you know, whatever. I probably still am.
So you started skateboarding in 73?
Yeah.
By that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was 10.
10 years old?
Yep.
Wow. Because the history that we know, it's like, you know, the Dogtown and Z-Boys movie. That's what that's as far as we can get, you know, like
commercial story.
Yeah, the Z-Boys and everything and all that. So that's when it all started back commercially.
Well, so in the 70s, yeah. So the urethane wheel sort of kicked off the Dogtown and the Z-Boy era, and it was basically the surfers surf down, skate, right?
Yes.
And then as the urethane wheel came around, well, now you can skate other things. Now you can skate pools and ditches, and you know, before it's like the steel wheels or the clay wheels, you couldn't get much out of them, right? So that led the progression. Then in 75, Road Rider started to do precision bearings. Actually, might have been late 74. So the precision bearing, the 608Z we know now, got added to the skateboard, right?
Okay.
So right there, right on top of each other, right? And then Tracker came out with the first skateboard truck that was made for skateboarding, because all the trucks prior to that were just roller skate trucks.
Okay.
Okay.
So Tracker was the first company, truck company.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So you look at that couple years, a couple pivotal things that happened. 7-ply boards already existed in 77. Okay, it's not the same 7-ply we have now by any means, but you see the refinement was happening, right? You know?
Yes. Okay. All right. So you started skateboarding, and then what made you get into a little bit of doing what you do? Like, for example, that stuff that you, the first rail that you made. You said you were like 14 years old, right?
Right. So I always made things. I had the opportunity where my dad worked in a college theater, and we build sets, and I go to work with dad and build things. So building things was common to me.
Okay.
And using power tools was common to me. I wasn't scared of the tools. A lot of people are. You know, when you don't have the experience, you're like, yeah, that could take off your finger like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's serious stuff. You know, glad to say I got all mine. Hopefully we keep it that way. My dad was missing half of this one.
Oh, yeah.
From a table saw accident. So I was constantly reminded. But people see me with tools and they run.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm real confident, and they're just like, ah.
And you were 14.
Yeah.
4 years skating also, like you started skating, but you were also building stuff at the same time, right?
Exactly. So rails back in the 70s, there were grab rails, okay? And they were made of wood. Some were made of urethane, and they were for grabbing.
That was the main
purpose.
The main
grab
use,
your
the main
board
purpose.
to do an aerial. Okay.
What the fuck?
Aerial's only been around for a couple of years, but you know, I got to grab it, right?
Yeah.
And so the rail to the left in that box has wood and formica and fiberglass in it. So there was a guy near me named Steve Fisher, and he made rails, and they were called fish sticks. He was a drummer in a band.
Yeah.
And they called us rails fish. So when I made rails, they automatically called them Schmitt sticks. It wasn't even a choice. It was just an applied name.
So yeah, everything was like we were talking before. Everything was given to you, like the name, the logo, and all that stuff. Like it was given to you, and you were just building stuff.
People would just go like, "Hey, you need this. You need to do business. You need to go here." So basically, one day at the store, at the skate park, I went to the store with Mike McGill and Alan Gilfin, and that's basically McTwist and Ollie.
Okay.
Actually, Ollie and McTwist, because McTwist was later. It didn't even happen yet.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why the logo has this cross stuff in the logo, the P-stick?
No,
not really?
Not really. The one logo with the rulers. The cross with the rulers, Something
like that. Or?
Yeah. But basically, Alan told me if rails slid, that'd be cool. Okay. So Ollie gave us slide rails.
Okay.
Via me.
One question on the Ollie. The Ollie was on the ramp or on the ground?
On the ramp and on the ground, both. He was known for doing it. He figured out how to take it elsewhere, where they had a oververt section at the skate park in Hollywood, Florida, and him and his friends could fly off with their no hands. Well, he figured out how to go do it elsewhere.
Okay.
But in general, it was this magical thing that was not really obtainable, right? And when he was inducted in the Skateboarding Hall of Fame, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, and I did his induction, and I did all the research in the magazines, and in his Who's Hot in 78, he tells people to practice ollieing up the curb in their neighborhood.
Okay.
Nobody was listening.
78.
78. By 85, that was happening, right?
Yeah. And he was already doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said McTwist, which is McGill.
Yeah.
He did the first McTwist?
Yeah.
Okay. He invented
So he was a local at my skate park. Alan lived in Hollywood, Florida, so he was a ways away, but Mike was around my neighborhood.
Okay. And how did you progress with the rails? Why did you keep doing that?
So I made them out of sheets of plastic. So you could see the white one there with 3 holes in it. And then you could see the pink one. So by 1980, I bought all the scrap plastic from the plastics company, and then I went to buy a sheet, a full sheet, and I was like, oh, I can't even make this product and sell this at that price.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because it's very expensive material. And then some plastics company in Miami, because I reached out to like Orlando and Miami, hey, maybe I can buy everybody else's scraps, right? and this guy in Miami just says, hey, you're barking up the wrong tree. Call this guy Bob Kelly is a plastic salesman, and he comes down to Florida and sells this kind of plastic to the phosphate industry. It's this tough, durable plastic. So the guy came on a sales trip and met me, and basically that became the first Type 1 rail. So now I didn't even have to make them anymore.
Okay.
All I had to do was package them, and he was making them. I didn't even make them anymore. And then if we look at the purple one, you can see it's wide with a lip. That's sort of 86. The black one's probably 88. The last one on the right, you don't see any bolt holes because there's a special fastener inside there. You put the fasteners in the board and slide the rail in and then tighten it down. So no bolt holes in the rail. Because the bolt holes, energy always takes the path of least resistance. So that's where it's going to get, you're going to slide and it's going to get stuck in that spot, and then it's going to wear more and more and more.
So pretty much you invented that. You were the one that...
I can't say. I was in Florida doing my thing, right? You know, and people elsewhere were doing things.
Okay.
You know, so you don't really know where that parallel line really is. You know, it's clear that I took it to the place that it became standard.
Okay.
You know, and for me, doing business out of Florida was not standard. Everything was in California.
Yeah.
So most everything 75% of what I sold to California from Florida.
Wow.
So I moved,
right?
and then eventually moved to California.
Because you had to, or?
Well, it was a sort of adapt. I mean, I was out of high school. I was, you know, progressing on with life. You know, I built ramps a lot, and I would get the California pros to come to have our contest at the St. Pete ramp, and I was well known for building ramps.
Okay.
And I would organize events, take pictures, write articles for Thrasher. You know, do whatever you had to do to keep your scene going, right? That's really what it was. It was your scene, you know? So we had this scene in Florida. Kona used to have this yearly contest, and they were sort of an icon that the skateboard industry would come out for the Kona event. And that would be sort of like people on the East Coast would come to that event to see the California pros. And then they came to our ramp one trip, and they're like, oh, and then 6 months later we had a pro contest, and a bunch of people came back. And, you know, we had a scene, you know?
Yeah. So moving on with that, you started then after that on 1990, something like that. You started with the Schmitt STIX company.
No, so the Schmitt STIX company started in '78
with the rails.
With the rails.
With the rails.
So I started making boards in '83 or selling boards in '83. I'd made them before, but they weren't good enough to sell because I was still practicing.
Okay.
It took a lot of time, a lot of practice.
Yeah. It's like a perfectioning.
Yeah, how was that process of like perfectioning that?
The willingness to try, right?
Yeah.
You try and adapt, and you try and adapt, and you try to adapt, you know? But at the end, the guys in California were taking my skateboard, sending the graphics off, and pros in California were riding them because my product was progressive. It was progressive. I was known for being technical. I literally would have these ads, and I put a blueprint in there. Hey, skateboard industry, if you want to make a skateboard work good, look, you need to do this. You know, this is a quarter-page ad from Thrasher in '83. You know, but like this was a full-page ad, you know, in Transworld or something, you know, in '87. You know, but now I'm like a full-fledged company. You know, it's no longer the amateur quarter-page ad, right?
Yes.
A new degree of concave.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and then that progressed to the Chris Miller board. Here is the first double kick 7-ply board. So before then, the noses were short, they'd be spooned. There was no leverage on the front. And it basically was a lever, right? And for me, it was a lever trying to do a fakie hang up on a vert ramp without grabbing the nose. That's what it was for me, without grabbing the tail, you know? And that's what it was for me, you know. But the influence of seeing people skate and around people all the time, you know.
Okay, so I have one question, like the evolution of the shape that we skate right now.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, it's just years of refinement, right? So if we look at a skateboard like that from 88 and shape boards, and as we get into the 90s, the shapes start to disappear, the boards start to become narrower. You know, as we get into 92, we're pretty much just a popsicle now, right? You know, 90, 91, we're eggish shaped, you know, and then it just sort of just became a popsicle, and that really became the shape ever since, right? And the reality is, what people are riding skateboards, flipping them and doing tricks and nollie and, you know, wanting to move forward, that's what was needed. Now, what's the perfect width? That's all an opinion. You know, it worked at 7.5, it works 8.5. Did it work at 10 inches? Not so well. Right?
Yeah.
You know, there's a point where nothing's impossible if you're willing to work hard enough to try. But the tide of what happens is what the average of people do, right? Mm-hmm. That's what the market becomes, is with that tidal movement of whatever's going on.
Yeah, like if it's like a wave, right? Like if you see somebody doing that stuff, and if you see somebody doing it with a certain type of like skateboard, like people are going to want to do that same thing, right?
Yeah, so sort of like even the case of like what I was building in 83, other people were building in 87, okay? Mm-hmm. What I was building in 86, other people were building in 88. What I was building in 88, mm-hmm. 89, if you weren't building it by 90, you weren't making a skateboard anymore. It was over. Like you couldn't make that board anymore. You know, there was a couple years, and that's because the tide of the consumer said, mm-hmm. oh, this is what we want. This is what we want. Mm-hmm. This is what works.
Okay.
Right? And the consumer becomes the boss.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you need to.
Because if he doesn't spend money to buy something, then
yeah.
it doesn't work, right? Like, you know, and I really appreciate you guys spending your money buying things I love to make.
I love making boards. How did you start making like this fabrication of skateboards?
Well, when in high school, I went to a vocational school and I built sailboats. So I worked in a factory for 3 years. These boats were big. I was trained to build cabinets where in general are square, but in a boat you might have 2 square corners and the rest of it's round.
Yes.
And I thought it was really cool.
Okay.
Fit those curves, make that work, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd been working in a factory. Then I built my little workshop and I built my boards. My first time pressed my boards was my mom's car rolled up on top of my mold. Mm-hmm. And then if the glue wasn't dry and she had to go to work in the morning, then I lost it, right? You know, I figured out how to build a press in my bedroom and control the climate and use car jacks and make it better. But so basically by the time I got to California in 85, I joined up with Vision. So I set up my workshop I'd had in Florida and brung it all in a U-Haul. And then 8 months later, they walked me into this huge building and said, here's your new factory. You know, I'm 21. I'm like, how the hell am I going to
21?
Yeah.
21? Fuck.
You know, it's like, but I did. I made it work, right? You know?
Yes.
And there were other people that helped me do it as well. I didn't have to talk to the electric company at that time. Someone else took care of that. You know, it's like, you know, I didn't have to worry about capital. Somebody had the money to make it happen. If I wanted to go buy this tool, I went and bought it.
Yes.
You know, that type of thing.
So you were always trying to focus on like evolving, right? Like the shape of skateboards and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, how do you make it ride better? Mm-hmm. That's the reality. How do you make it work better? And part of that better was also the production process, setting the standard. So when I moved to California, I remember these guys from Taylor and Dykema, Brad Dorfman that owned Vision, who I joined up with. He brings these guys through and like, oh, that's really cool, but you can't do that in production. And they knew because they were a factory that made millions of skateboards already. They knew that you couldn't have round rails. However, they didn't know what a shinner felt like, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And they didn't care about the disappointment when your board was upside down sliding and a big chip would come off of it. Mm. They didn't care about that disappointment because we'll just sell them another skateboard. Yeah. That's fabulous, right? And for me, it wasn't that. It was like, how do I make this product the best it can be? So they're like, you can't do that in production. And really, they just decided the fate of a skateboard right there because to me, I was going to prove that it could happen.
Okay.
Right? And then I raised the caliber of what a skateboard was. The reality is they used horrible glues, you know, and back in the 80s, if you left your skateboard in the front yard and the sprinklers on in the morning, it would be delambed because there's no waterproof glue, right?
Okay.
Yeah. They didn't care if it was waterproof. They're like, you know.
Yeah, they just wanted to sell. Yeah.
Right. They just wanted to sell, you know, and I wanted to skate, right?
Yeah.
Simple as that, you know. And even today, people are like, you're so lucky you can have a new board every day. You know how often I put a new board together? Probably once every year or two. I'll either go on a trip and I'll make a special board for a trip, or I got something I really want to test and I'll make a board. Otherwise, I got free time. I'm going to go skate.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah, because like we were talking right now behind the cameras, you're still skating, right? You still go skate, you still go like cruise around.
I got my 50 carve guidance in yesterday at Foods Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going skating right now after this?
I hope so.
If it's not raining,
if the weather clears up.
Yeah. Hopefully. I want to see Julio skate. I want to see how Julio is shaking his head. All right. And so you started with that factory. You said it was a big factory.
So I built the Vision factory and quickly got that ramped up into production. Then within 2 years of that relationship with Vision, I stopped working for him because I had a complicated relationship where I had a licensee as STIX and I had a job as Paul, the factory guy. And they wouldn't, because I was 21, they wouldn't pay me fair for my job, right? And then because they felt their business made my business work, they didn't really want to treat me right as a licensor. And it's like, I built you a factory so you could sell skateboards and you're selling them and you're mad at me? So I basically quit my job and then just had a dicey relationship with them for the next 3 years till I finally walked away in 1990 and started New Deal.
Okay.
New Deal.
Right. So STIX was around, for those years. And in 1990, I left, said bye. I'm going to go do my thing.
So you started New Deal. I remember New Deal. I think Paul Rodriguez skated for New Deal, right? No, he didn't?
No.
So how long was New Deal for? How long did it last?
Its prime time for New Deal was 90 through 93, 94. But it was around till 2000 or so, or something like that.
Okay.
But like Ed Templeton launched his career on New Deal. So he was the rookie. He was an amateur on STIX and first pro on New Deal.
Who else was on? Who was like the people on the New Deal when you started?
Right. So it was Andy Howell. It was and Steve Douglas. So they were both my partners in New Deal.
Okay.
And the things we built after that. Ed Templeton, Danny Sargent, Andrew Morrison. So basically, it was really Ed and Danny and Andy were really the street contingent, and Douglas and Morrison were the vert contingent.
Okay. I don't know why I thought Paul Rodriguez was on the New Deal. When he started, when he was little. I don't know why.
I don't remember who he skated for when he was little.
I forgot. But okay, so you started New Deal. It lasted until
It lasted till 2000.
2000?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay, and
And then we finally just shut it down because it just wasn't, it lost its generational relevance. When it came out, it was fresh, the art was right, the team was right, it was legit, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the reality is that Andy, being a creative, was bored, so we let him start Underworld Element. So there was nobody taking care of, he had some artists that he coached through New Deal, but because there was no one with that brand vision to keep what it was, But Andy, as a creative, was already bored. He was like, I'm on to my next thing.
Okay. So he started Element.
Underworld Element, which was grungy and dirty, street-like.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because when I started skating, it's like 2000 or something like that, in 2000. We saw videos, skate videos like 411 or something, and we were watching always commercials in the videos from New Deal. But we are like, how you say, emocionados, stoked with the brand. Like, New Deal is like the fresh, is like the shit, But when we are in the skate shops, there are no more New Deal because we saw videos, viejos, like old videos, like 2 or 3 years old. And it's kind of Mexico scene or something. Yeah,
so... like if there's a new video coming out in the US, Mexico will watch it like 4 years after it came out.
3 or 4 years.
It was 4 years behind.
Yeah.
Right.
For the video. So he was watching like the New Deal commercials.
Right.
Probably 4 years later, like 4 years after it came out.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting because basically 411 was birthed at New Deal. So we started it with the video equipment that we had for New Deal is what we used to start 411 with.
Okay.
So that happened in my building too.
411.
Yeah. So that's probably why you see the New Deal ads because we still ran ads.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we made it, right? But the reality is the sales for the brand weren't really working so well.
411 was really, I remember when I started skating, 411 was really big. Like it was like one of those videos that you used to watch to get hyped to go skate.
Yeah.
Because everything that came out, like the opening and the song, like it gets stuck in your mind. Like all that stuff was really motivating for us as skaters. Right. What happened to 411?
It basically just didn't transition when things started to change with media and internet rise started to happen, you would have think it could have captured the internet, but the problem is you got to have somebody pay you to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And 401 had gotten to the point where it got established. It had a lot of staff, had a lot of overhead. Then it got sold to somebody, and then they couldn't make the business model work either. So the business model was over. We no longer could sell tapes anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And basically, well, free clicks, well, then you got to have advertising, and we weren't, there was no model for that yet. So it's really disappointing looking at it that it didn't make it, because it was so influential to so many generations of skaters.
Yeah, like I was telling Tony, like there was people in the Formula 1 videos that only had one trick, and that one trick he was already famous for that one trick.
Right.
And then he disappeared, but he stayed like someone famous, right? Like, I don't know.
Right.
There's a bunch of those people that were in the 411 videos, and they just had one trick and disappeared, but I can still remember one of their names and stuff.
Right.
So it was very influential.
Well, part of it was that belief that I could be in there. I could be in 411, right? It had that but wait, I could be part of that.
Yes.
And there was an inclusionness that there was. The new issue comes out, like we're all part of it. You're watching with your buddies. It's like, just it had a real inclusive feel to it.
I have one question. Why you choose or you choose the 411? Is 411? I think is the number you call to report UFO or something like that?
To get information.
Yeah.
So
to get information.
In the United States, you call and say 411. Hey, operator, I need a phone number for Julio's Pizza Shop on Del Rey Avenue.
Okay.
Or whatever. And then go like, here's the number. Let me connect you.
Okay.
So that was the whole idea with the 411?
It was like a joke or something?
Right.
It's like information, right?
It's information.
Okay, nice. So when you were doing 411, were you doing like boards, or you stepped that aside?
No, so New Deal, Element, Mad Circle, and then I built boards for other brands.
Okay.
So STIX is a manufacturing company. So I had STIX. I actually started it in '87 when I quit my job at Vision as just my structure to buy equipment and start building things up.
Okay.
And then in '90 we started New Deal. And then, 92 started Underworld Element. Then we started Forum 1. And then Giant Skateboard Distribution is sort of an umbrella.
Okay.
And then Mad Circle, Golden State Wheel Company, Destructo Trucks, bunch of different brands and things.
And what about, can we move on to like why you came to Mexico to build all this stuff, like the skateboards, the manufacturing of skateboarding and all that stuff?
Yeah, so it's basically, the story of business is adapt or die, right? And if you don't change, so like 401, it couldn't adapt fast enough to last,
Okay.
If it would have been one person, doing it, it could have made it work, right? But not with a whole office and a whole bunch of people. So it's adapt or die. So in the early 2000s, we sold Element to Billabong, and they told me, hey, if you don't produce stuff in China, you're going to lose our business. And I ended up partnering up with a company that made lower end skateboards in China to make the high end ones. So they already had the veneer, they had the transfer printing. I just had to I brought better glue and molds and knowledge, right?
Yes.
And at the end, I never really got that operation ran for 10 years, but it never got to its potential.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And in Costa Mesa, for instance, the tools we see in this building here used to be in that building. And I started the China thing and then was trying to have high-end USA, low-end China, right? Or medium-end, shall we say. And then basically it came to the point where, hey, I got to move this operation down here. And some other manufacturing companies didn't go to China. They just went to Mexico.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, if I would have done that and not spent the energy to go to China, maybe I would have been more entrenched with it. But China was interesting to do. And but the reality is there's a lot of fraud over there. People think there's lots of fraud in Mexico. Not for me, not in my business. But in China, there's fraud just to get to the port, to move a pallet to the port.
Yeah.
We got to have a permit to move through that city. Well, what permit is that? The fraud permit, right?
Yeah.
Things just disappear, right? I don't know where your container is, bro. Say no more.
So anyway, so what happened is eventually came to the point where, hey, the only way I'm going to survive is move my factory from Costa Mesa to Mexico. Other people have done it, and other people have failed as well. There's been 2 major factories go out of business since I've been down here. Because the cycle of business does this.
Yeah.
And you have to have enough brands that you're doing business with in a factory that you have some highs and lows and you have enough to keep it going, right?
Yeah.
So there's 40 people that work here. So when you guys come back tomorrow, you'll see 40 people here working away, and this is their full-time job.
40 people, that's a lot of people in
Yeah.
a factory. When you were in Costa Mesa, how many people did you have working for you?
Oh, at some point it got crazy because of all the in-between Giant and STIX, 4-in-1, Indian Ink. Like the whole group was roughly 500 employees across everything.
How many?
500. Well, STIX used to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
The presses wouldn't turn off. There were 2 truckloads of wood on the highway at any moment coming here from Wisconsin.
Damn.
But then that quickly changed as we got to 2000. So I built 300,000 a year through the 90s, 500 in 99, 700 in 2000, 920,000 in 2001. And then I slowed down purchasing in July. I couldn't slow down the factory for another month. And then that fall, people realized like, oh, the race is over. There's no more race. And then it was like, boom, now 600,000, now 300,000, and China came in to basically swoop it away and take away my business and take away my contribution. Luckily, I don't have to see those people at the skate park or the skate contest or anything because they could care less, right?
Yeah.
They're not here. They're not part of our culture.
They're not in the skateboarding industry.
We're in the skateboard culture, right?
Exactly. That's why we're here. So you right now you have 40 people working for you.
Yep.
You have 40 pretty much paisanos working for you, giving them all like the healthcare and everything.
Yeah, they have
that
healthcare. So we're a
need.
legitimate business here. We have to operate by those rules. That means we can't have skateboards just out the back door. There's no cheap thing to be had being sold. Everything is tightly controlled security-wise. The employees get all their benefits that you would get from a regular paid job.
Okay.
When it's cash society, then it's hard to get benefits, right? But when it's a legitimate job in a maquiladora, but you can't operate a maquiladora business without being legitimate. It doesn't work. And people want to think, oh, it's Mexico, it's a third world country. You want to try to cross some inventory across the border and have a business work? It's a challenge. It takes a lot, But that's the case too. You want to cross the border to the United States from China, you got to do compliance.
Yes.
There's no like, sure, I'm just going to drive them across in my car. Everything will be good. No, it doesn't work that way.
It's so crazy how all this stuff works. Like it's like looking at it from a perspective of me being there illegally in the U.S. It's like, man, just by that. Just by looking at that, it's like how everything, like all the business, everything works. That's why I was asking you that question, like how did you get that entrepreneur mindset, And it's something that, do you think that it's something that it's given to you or something that you worked for?
I think we're all given the willingness to try if you're willing to try. A lot of people are just willing to talk, right? But talk will only get you so far, and you're trying. You have to do something real, but then someone has to appreciate it, right?
Yes.
So for me, when people appreciated my products and want to buy them, and I'll trade dollars for those products, right? Because you can make a product that satisfies your own ego that nobody wants to buy. Or you're so protectionary. I'm so protective of this. I'm going to just keep it so close. If nobody copies you, you're no good. That's the reality of it. If you're not copied, you're no good.
Okay.
It's a very simple law of business, really. But what happens from a youth culture side is you're a generation, you're an ego, you have a perspective, right? And you want to rise up with your perspective and your peers.
So what do you think it's like the secret for staying in the business?
Understand the tide of what's happening. Because when you're the hippest and coolest, you're up on a hill, right? But it's really hard because then you fall down that hill.
Yes.
Right? And how hard you fall depends on whether you can make it the next year or not, right?
Okay.
So it's a really hard thing with business is that you have this wish to be big, right? And we want to be huge. It's like, you got a whole nother problem, when you're big, You got a whole other problem when you got to pay the payroll for those 40 people, right?
Yeah.
Got to pay the rent, got to pay the electric bill. The lights are on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like you were saying, like you are in charge of a lot of people. So when business is really good, like you have that over like on your shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a hard thing to process in your mind to be like, if I don't wake up today, a lot of people are gonna suffer from this. So I gotta stay, present. I gotta stay doing everything that I can so that everything that I have works.
Right.
Not only for me, but for other people as well.
Yeah, well, it's not even just for my employees, by the way. It's for their families.
Exactly.
Right? And in Mexico here, you have the family unit seems to be a lot tighter than it is in the United States in that I'm working for my family, I'm supporting my thing. I've always seen it. You got to realize that when I made skateboards in California, I made them with Mexican immigrants in the United States. Now I make them in Mexico with Mexican nationals. Right?
Yes, that's crazy. And not only that, you're helping how many skateboarders?
How many?
How many are you building?
Well, in my career, I built over 19 million of them in my different factories.
19 million.
Yeah.
So 19 million skateboarders.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, a lot of people have more than one board. I don't really know how many. I would say my effect is a lot bigger than that because I help set the standard for others to copy, right?
Yeah.
That's the reality. It's like the other people making skateboards they didn't set the standard. They followed it, right?
Okay.
And then people always say, well, when's a skateboard going to get better or higher refined? They don't understand how refined a skateboard is and then how cost effective it is,
Yes.
Because if it was some high-end composite aerospace thing and it cost $1,000, well, you couldn't get a new board tomorrow, next week or next month. It'd be once a year, right?
Yeah.
So there's a certain thing, but also with Mother Nature's material being hard maple that we use right here, and the nanotubes that are in there, they're amazing because that's what we get popped from. We get it from Mother Nature and hard maple.
Yes. Do you know the process of how the wood comes to your place or how?
Well, so here, this is a big sheet of veneer. So what happens is the wood will get harvested in a forest somewhere in the Great Lakes region of North America. The mills we use are out of Wisconsin, but the logs could be from New York, Ohio, Canada, Michigan. Just depends on weather.
Okay.
Because if it's muddy, they can't get a tractor in the forest to take a tree out.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's too much snow, they can't. So there's a whole seasonal thing, and the veneer people manage that, right? But then there's the aspect of they then take the logs to the mill. They'll spin them into veneer, so it looks like a roll of paper towel, and it just comes out this big long sheet. And then they dry it, and then if it's going to be dyed a color, they dye it a color.
Okay.
And then they'll send me these big sheets, and here in the factory, we'll cut them down to what width we want and what size we want. So we use the cost effectiveness of the labor structure here and the high-end equipment they have in Wisconsin. They got millions and millions of dollars of machines in the factories that do this, right?
So crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy how the whole world works.
Yeah.
So I don't have to have those machines or that knowledge, glad to say. I got this knowledge.
Yes. How many shapes do you think you have done?
I can't even really claim it. Back in the Schmitt STIX days, I didn't even make the shapes. Chuck Holtz made all the Schmitt STIX shapes. I made the mold. I made the shape of the mold, the surfaces of the molds. But Chuck was good at shapes, so I just let him do it.
Okay.
But here at the factory, we have over 1,800 shapes. So on the walls here, you see these pieces.
Yes.
And those are templates. So they make the shape. So you'll see tomorrow with a copy shaper, we'll shape some boards out.
Oh, okay.
And you'll see how that works. Right?
Wow.
So I can look at my computer and go like, okay, you want this width, this wheelbase, this nose tail length or what's important to you and go, well, here's some plausible answers. Nah, I don't want that. I want a 1/4 inch different. I want an 1/8 inch different. So a lot of times, a lot of those templates might have been made for a pro skater. They only made 20 or 50 or 100, and then they moved on to something else, right?
Yes.
Some of them have made 40,000 boards, the real popular shapes, or 100,000 boards, right? So go figure.
Too much information for me. So I on the 9 Club, I saw that you have had some pro skateboarders here. And do you bring them here?
It's pretty rare that pro skaters come to the factory. I had people here, like PJ Lag came with me years ago working on something. Who else has been here? Christian Asoy's been here.
Christian.
In Costa Mesa, pros would come all the time, right? So my workshop is in Costa Mesa. So I live in Orange County. So I have a small workshop space where people come all the time. And we'll work on samples, molds, prototypes. But down here, not that many people get down here.
Okay. So what do you help them with, like the symmetrical board? Why does that help?
Well, so for instance, there's 3 things that make a board truly symmetrical. There's the surface of the mold. Okay, so the bends, right? Some molds will have a steeper nose and a tail. Okay. So there's surfaces. Then there's the drilling. Because if the holes are drilled in the center, that it's going to lift up the same way. And then there's the length of the nose and tail. So to be truly symmetrical, 3 things got to be right. Okay. But what do you want? What are you looking for? And then in a symmetrical thing, there's 2 ways to look at it. There is like, I don't want to think about my board. I'm going to have my trucks adjusted the same, and I'm not going to look at it, and I don't care which way it is, I'm going to skate. I don't want to think, right? Or there's the viewpoint I go like, and that's like I got 1 knife. I got a pocket knife with 1 blade. That's it, right? Well, what if you have a pocket knife with 2 blades? Because if the nose works different than the tail, and you understand it, you can use it. And usually with pro skaters, you talk about what's different with the board, and they're like, oh yeah, I do that off the nose all the time. Do you know why you do it? Because it works. Pretty simple, right? It works.
It works.
They just don't know why it works, right? And then I explain why it works, or explain how to go use that to their benefit. And some people are like, it's over their head, and some people are like, oh wow, you know? And there's some pros that I work with who are like, hey, here's what I'm feeling now. They don't even come to the shop. They've been to the shop. They don't even come to the shop anymore. They're like, hey, here's what I'm feeling. I make it. We know how to communicate. And they're like, loving it.
Nice. Nice. But with that symmetrical board, like I have like, for me, for example, when I skate switch with my nose. Like I pop with my nose. Okay. So my question is like, if you're skating a symmetrical board, and you skate one side more, isn't that gonna wear off? Yeah. So your angle's gonna change. So basically, if you check, there's a tech spec video that Julio and I did a couple weeks ago, where I use an iPhone as a way to measure the angle on your board. So check that out, or maybe you can share a link for people. Okay. So trying to make it really simple for people, right? Okay. Like, you got an iPhone or an Android will probably do the same thing. You don't need no special tool anymore, and come to understand your product more. And if you want to get a tape measure, that's pretty simple and cheap. Easy way to understand things too, right? So I want to try to really help empower people with the information. Some people could care less. Some people can skate anything, and it doesn't matter, right? The one thing I would say that there's a big misperception of skateboarding that switch is opposite of regular. And it's not really opposite, because it's happening in front of your direction of momentum. And when you're working off the tail, it's behind your direction of momentum. Yeah. Okay. So do you really need the same tool in a different place? Probably not. And that's why some boards have a steeper nose. That's why some boards would be drilled forward, but they'll have more fingers of flat in the back than in the front. And that makes it light to pick up, a little more aggressive on the nose. But because when you're working off the nose and in front of your direction momentum, it's a lot more of throw it really quick, right? Wow. Where the Ollie is more like your body weight and your centering is more, you're going with it, right? Here, you got to throw it in front because it's chasing you. Right? But if you don't throw it, it doesn't chase you.
right?
That's crazy.
So it's not opposite, unless you see some guys where they'll just jump a 180 in the air and just start riding the board backwards. There's this guy in LA, Skategoat. Look him on Instagram. This guy, you can't tell when he's regular and when he's switch. And he'll be in the middle of a run and he'll just 180 his body really quick. And it's just amazing. And so rad to see.
Yeah. He'll 180 and then do like a switch straight flip or something like that, right?
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. I think he's like one of the only people that can skate switch and regular as good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you, with your experience, do you know anyone else that can do that?
Not like him. So whenever I see him skate, it's always a pleasure to watch him skate in person. And the fact that he's got street skills and transition skills and skate park skills, you know, he's really interesting to watch.
Yes. I do notice that he does like I don't know what switch or regular is, but he skates one side transition and he skates the other side street.
I've heard some people tell me that, and I've never asked him and don't really know.
So we don't know what if it's goofy or regular.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, it may never be told. I don't know. Have to ask his parents. See if they understand, right? Hey, was your child run goofy or regular?
Exactly, right? Like maybe they know. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about your for example, that is that a trophy?
That's an award, but the skateboard on it. So I brought things from my office in Costa Mesa. So that's a award for creating IASC, which is the International Association of Skateboard Companies. Okay. Something that now sort of, the way we would know it now is Go Skateboarding Day came from IASC.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Go Skateboarding Day came from that. But actually its biggest impact was public skate parks. Okay. Because it got the hazardous recreational activities laws changed in the 90s that led the path to California to be like, oh, well, it's less liability to have them with a skate park and a sign than it is on the city streets. And that was a big generational change. So that was a huge issue with that.
Yes.
Skateboarding Hall of Fame actually came through that as well. So its legacy now of IASC is really Go Skateboarding Day, Skateboarding Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was part of that. What up there? Bro Style.
The Bro Style.
Bro Style was just an award I got in Tampa a couple of years ago. I went to an event. I was in a wheelchair. I'd broken my femur and like, you showed up anyways?
The
Here,
femur?
You get the Bro Style. yeah, I broke my femur in two.
How did you break it?
Snowboarding Mount Baldy.
Oh, snowboarding. Oh, yeah. Fuck.
My front leg.
Wow.
When you roll over and your leg does this inside, nothing poking out, you know it's a new feeling.
Oh,
gosh, these new feelings are not good. Oh, I had it. I blew up my MCL 30 years ago, and like it was a new feeling.
That was a new feeling, right? Yeah, that's I blew up my MCL too.
Let me see that Transworld one there. That was an award for just a thank you award. There was like a World's Fair in Canada, Vancouver, Canada, and they built this really huge ramp, and then it wasn't very good, and I got there and fixed it.
Okay.
And solved the problem so that World Championship event could go on type thing.
Why they need to fix it? People got hurt or something?
The plywood was all splintery, so people got hurt badly, knocked out of the contest. And then it wasn't vertical. It's a vert ramp with no vert. And then the crazy thing is that it's in a big festival, right?
Okay.
And they built a metal frame, very expensive, highly engineered, put together with cranes, but you can't take cranes in there because the event's happening. You can't, like, can we just get a forklift in here to pick up? No, we can't do that, So basically I had to fix it. And really the pro skaters worked along with me to fix the ramp, which wasn't uncommon in that era.
Okay.
We're literally like, oh, we're trying to have a contest here, but we got to fix the ramp. Hey, pass the hat around, let's collect some money, to fix the ramp. And I would lead the charge.
So it was like a DIY sort of thing.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. DIY where you wouldn't expect DIY to happen, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of a festival. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then what else is here?
The glass one?
Yeah, the glass one there, that's a Florida Skateboarding Hall of Fame. So the guys in Florida started a Skateboarding Hall of Fame in 2002. So I was inducted that first year.
Okay.
Along with like Bruce Walker, Alan Gilfin, Clyde Rogers, Kelly Lynn, Mike Fulmer. Who else? All the heavies.
McGill?
I don't know if he was that year or the next year.
Okay.
I don't remember. The lineage of it. It's 20 years ago. I mean, I'm keeping the accuracy here where I need a tape measure, tools, right?
That's my thing.
If I was at my computer right now, we could get the accurate answer.
Yeah.
I'm not, So what else we got? So my skateboarding Hall of Fame trophy, that's 2020.
2020.
So that was pretty amazing. It's sort of like my college diploma. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. But it was crazy because they kept on, they didn't tell me I was being inducted. It was kept secret. And then they, because I was the Icon Award and that gets voted on differently.
Okay.
And, but then that day they're like, hey, watch the ceremony. And I've always been part of the Hall of Fame and supported. And like, yeah, I watch it, And then I was inducted that year. Well, that was like 1:00 that day. I was like, wow, I'm on a high. Wow, this is cool. 4:00 that day, it's Jeff Grosso died today. And he was a team rider of mine years ago. And it was like deflation. Brr, brr, brr. And COVID's going on at this time. And we don't know what's going on with COVID. So basically, I never got to celebrate. I never got the award until 2 years later, year and a half later. And then they did 2 years at once.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. So I got the Icon Award. The pro skaters just get the regular award, and then there's a few people who have Icon Awards like Craig Stesick, Glenn Friedman, Grant Britton, me. There's some brands have an award like Powell Peralta or NHS or Tracker Trucks.
Okay.
So there's different levels there's been over the years.
The Icon, so it's iconic.
It's iconic.
The Icon Award. So yeah.
And then a couple just skateboarding trophies. The taller one was when I moved to California in '85. I won a contest at Upland, the famous combi pool, but I wasn't in the combi pool. I was in the bank slalom course.
Oh, the combi.
And then I wasn't pro. I was amateur. So we're talking low level here. But
you won.
Biggest trophy of my life.
You won.
Dave Duncan got second place that day.
Okay.
He used to always win all the bank slalom contests. Him and Dave Crabb. So I beat him on that one.
So you were pretty good on skateboarding.
Bank slalom. That's about all I was ever good at.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the little one is from first place loser, 2012 skate park at Tampa for the Florida Skateboard Hall of Fame. Donnie Meyer won. He got inducted that year. That's probably why he won. Mini ramp bowl contest.
Okay.
I actually won an industry contest in that bowl once. The
industry contest
at Spot, but they didn't give me a trophy that year.
Why is that?
I don't know. I never asked.
They forgot to make it.
I think part of it was they accused me of skating switch, and I was clearly going fakie, and they don't know the difference.
Is that for real?
Yeah, well, I carve bowls fakie, but my feet don't change. I just look the other way. The guys have switched, the whole body movement, everything is changing, right?
Yeah.
I just go fakie.
Nice.
Just fake it out, right?
Wow, there's a lot of history, Paul. A lot of history. You've done a lot of things for the skateboarding industry in the whole world, I think.
Yeah, well, I feel pretty lucky I got away with it my whole life. I'll tell you that. It hasn't been easy.
Yeah, like we talked right now.
Downs,
Ups and
overs of business. It's challenging.
But you're still here. You're still going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. A whole life. This time, can we say in putting skateboarding there? It's a whole life.
Yeah.
The science behind the skateboarding.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I wish we could talk about, but like I really want to understand. And
maybe I'll come down to Guadalajara sometime. I hear you got some skate parks down there.
Yeah.
Come down and have some sessions and hang out and talk about things. Or
we have a few parks.
It will be awesome.
It will be awesome for us. Yes.
Bring a couple tools, modify people's boards live or something. Who knows?
So 15 years in this place.
Yes, we've been here for 15 years. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we're going to do a tour, right, tomorrow?
Yeah, so we're going to give you guys a tour of this place, and then you also get a chance to catch up with Julio and Jose and get their perspective as Mexican-American skaters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Part of making it happen, because this place doesn't happen with me alone. There's a whole team of 40 people here.
Yeah.
It's like Paul doesn't have a blank to press at his workshop in Costa Mesa if those guys didn't run it through the glue machine and press it, right? I mean, I'll be the plan, I'll make a mold in Costa Mesa, I'll bring it here, they'll press it for me, and then, I'll take it back and cut it out, or I'll bring it over here to these guys and have them cut it out for me.
Yes.
And I pretty much, I know how to run every machine and make everything work here. But also these guys do it all day. They're actually better at it than me. I just build the system or the process, so it's like, there's a lot of data. You see tags on everything. So everything here is information. I could be in Costa Mesa right now and know that pallet 934867 is for this customer. It's pressed these colors. It's cured now. It's been sat enough days that we can cut it, or it's not cured yet. You can't cut that. It's not. So there's a system. There's a system for everything we do here.
What do you mean by cure?
Cure. Well, if I glued up the board today and tried to skate it tomorrow, it won't
work.
get droopy, right?
Yeah.
It will be soggy. So the glue, the wood has an average 8 to 10% moisture.
Okay.
The glue is 50% moisture. So when I spread the glue on the wood, or the machine spreads it on, it instantly starts to dry. And that moisture is going into the air, but it's also going into the pores of the wood.
Okay.
So the nanotubes in the wood are literally sucking that moisture in, that glue in. And imagine if you were a superhero in a cartoon and there's slime coming down the tube, right? So that's what it's like when you close the press, the glue down the tube, right? Microscopically. And then what happens is the moisture starts to dry away. It wicks into the wood. It comes out the end of the nose and the tail. It comes out the side of the board. And then that moisture stabilizes and evens. So if you have a skateboard that when you feel the edge, the plies they seem inconsistent. They hang out here.
Yes.
That's because somebody cut the skateboard too early. But they didn't care. Yeah. They sold it anyways. It didn't matter, right? So it's part of that quality thing,
Yeah.
So all the skateboards we make are cold pressed. And glad to say in general, to my knowledge, all the other skateboards made in Mexico are also cold pressed. Okay. Most of the skateboards made in China are hot pressed. Okay, so, if you got some beautiful carne asada here for dinner, let's put it in the microwave.
Okay.
Because that's what putting a hot press skateboard is. I got this beautiful wood.
Yes,
put it in the microwave and get it real quick.
Yeah, because they just want the money.
It won't work, right?
Well, it works. It just doesn't last good.
Okay.
Right? And you get lied because the boards are real stiff when they're new, but they break down really quick. Right?
Okay.
So there's all these little things that we know and that we won't compromise. Others compromise it because it's like, what does it matter? It's like, well, you don't skate, it doesn't matter to you, huh? But that's the case right there. If you don't skate, it doesn't matter to you.
They are not in the industry.
Luckily for us, you skate.
Yeah, exactly.
You have a whole history of skating, and you've been putting a lot of work into it, right? Like you've been putting a lot of work into every little aspect of everything.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I was watching on the 9 Club as well that something that got into my mind, that caught my mind. You guys were talking about putting the skateboards, like
storing them.
Yeah, storing them, like not to put them in the trunk because it's gonna, I don't know.
Right. So here's a good example of that. We don't see warped skateboards in the factory. We might see them in the office because it's leaning them up against the wall crooked.
Yes.
Okay. So hard maple is organic raw material. And we do everything we can to stabilize it,
okay,
right? And understand it and respect it. But just like a cabinet door you might have at the house that it works good, then 6 months later it sticks, and then 6 months later it works good again because the wood expands and contracts with the moisture. So the wetter the environment, the drier the environment. So this happens with the board, right? And understanding that. So if you leave a board in a hot trunk, you're making it steam inside there, right?
Okay.
And then it's trying to leach itself out. In general, skateboards warp easier from low humidity, not high humidity, but they get soggy from high humidity.
Yeah.
Okay.
They warp easy from low humidity because the low humidity wants to pull that moisture out. Okay.
Yeah.
And so just understanding that, right?
Okay. So to me, when I was listening to this, like it's still wood, but it's still life,
it's still live.
It's life.
It's pop is our life, right? I mean, that's the reality, that sense, that feeling.
Yes.
You know?
Is that why you think that we fall in love with skateboarding a lot? Like almost everyone that skates gets that feeling in the skateboarding?
Well, the greatest thing about skateboarding is it's like this self-directed thing, right? I decided what I ride. I decide where I'm at. I decide who I'm with and what I'm going to do with it, right? And your skill level decides that. Okay, you could have $1 million and go buy the greatest sports car, and the minute you pull out of the parking lot of the dealership, there's some rules you got to follow. What do you mean there's a red light? Fucking I want to go 100 kilometers an hour. What are you talking about? I just bought this deal, 200 kilometers. This is a fast one, right? It's like, it's that whole thing of like, your rule is your own internal. Your rule is what you decide what's right for you, right?
Okay.
And if what's right for you is just to push to the store, and that gives it to you. The greatest thing about skateboarding is you feel the vibration through your feet, some air on your face, and you made the decision. What you're going to do with it, where you're at, what it's all about. It's freedom, right?
Freedom.
It's freedom.
Yes. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no better explanation.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you for coming down.
It is
or coming up to Tijuana, that is.
Yes, it is really a dream. It's a dream to me for us to have you for you to have us here or to have you on the podcast. When I saw you on the first one, because you have 2 episodes, right? Like
I did a stop and chat as well as a regular episode. Yeah.
And when you were talking on the podcast, like you blew my mind of everything you talked about, and I'm like, man, I don't know what he's talking about, but I know there's a lot of knowledge there.
There's a lot of numbers.
There's a lot of knowledge, but yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, well, I'm just lucky because everybody in skateboarding is what I've reflected off to, right? So everybody that gives me their feedback, that asks for help, that interaction, action, reaction, right? If you don't pay attention, you don't learn anything, you don't progress.
Exactly.
So I really enjoy progressing a lot, and just want to say thank you to everybody in skateboarding. Give me the chance to pay attention.
Is there? Do you have any social media that people can follow you?
For me, I primarily play on Instagram, just as Professor Schmitt.
Okay.
That does post through to Facebook, if that's where people play. But I don't spend time on Facebook. I just spend it on Instagram.
Okay.
And it goes to Twitter too, but same thing. I really don't play there.
Okay.
Most on Instagram.
Right.
Okay.
And if there is people that want to contact you from the Mexican industry, like the brands, where can they contact you?
They can do a DM through STIX on Instagram.
Okay.
Is a good way to go, or through Julio, who handles sales and communications. So,
okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
A huevo.
A toda la banda, muchísimas gracias por ver este episodio. La neta que, qué nervios, pero
no mames, güey.
Es irreal, la neta.
Todavía hasta hace un par de días no lo creía, güey. Decía, a lo mejor ni es cierto, güey. A lo mejor ni se hace, güey, acá. Ya en la mañana que veníamos en el avión dije, no mames, güey, real.
Aquí estamos.
Y luego llegamos, güey, y el primero que veo saliendo del aeropuerto de Julio. Y ya, vénganse, cabrones. Y ya, a ver si conocen este vato. Y acá el profesor, güey, manejando. Dije, no mames, güey. Súper experiencia, güey. Chingón. Sí. Muchas gracias.
Well, I don't really know what they said, but I can tell they're happy.
I just want to say thank you for your contribution, for always push and raise the bar at skateboarding.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bueno, ya nada más para cerrar la dinámica, pero ¿cómo estaría bien que pusiera un emoji, güey?
You like emojis?
Emojis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you like them or not?
Why not? I don't know why.
Yeah. Is there a favorite one that you always use?
No.
You don't use them?
Nah, sometimes.
Not really?
Not much.
Do we put a happy face for the people that watch to the end?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Happy face
okay.
to the end. I'll take that.
Okay.
That's right.
Take that.
Ya escucharon, banda, o si no, pues ya lo leyeron aquí en los subtítulos. Gracias a todos los que llegaron a esta parte del episodio. Pongan ahí la carita feliz para que muestren el apoyo al profesor, güey, a nosotros, Efecto Ollie, a toda la industria del skate. Neta no la creemos, güey, pero pues súper chingón aquí. Muchas gracias a todos los que hicieron posible esto. Y pues nos vemos en un siguiente episodio. Recuerden que los campeones no sean drogas.
Yeah.
Ánimo, perros. Chido, güey.
That work?
I'm practicing my English.
You got great English.